Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this Diamond Call. If you're a Diamond member, you are in the right place. As you know, our guest, who I'm going to get to in a minute, is one of our own outstanding members, Vance Morris. And Vance has a Disney background, currently a couple of businesses. We'll get into all that. You also, some of you may recall seeing an advertising example of his in a fairly recent issue of the newsletter as a result of a little competition. So we'll get to Vance in just a second, but to acknowledge you, Vance, thank you for being with us.
Appreciate it.
And we have sort of accidental good timing because we'll be talking about Disney, and I have just returned from several days at Disney in Orlando myself. A small group of last year's Advanced Wealth Academy alumni and I spent 2.5 days there, some in session, but a lot of field trip stuff. So we were all over a couple of the parks and had a lunch with an Imagineer and spent some time over at the multi-million-dollar residential real estate development with the chief agent, real estate agent over there at Golden Oaks, and it was a very bright group of people, and we all learned a lot, me included. I always learn something when I go. Think you know everything, and then you discover something else that they're brilliant at or that they've come up with or they have recently innovated to make money just quickly. So many of you will have been and have seen the trot out of the disposable rain jackets and umbrellas anytime there's a thunderstorm, which in Florida is actually most days of the year. There's a brief one. This time, because it got down to 28 degrees, they were trotting out giant piles of stocking caps and gloves and merrily selling those just like they do the rain slickers. And it was the first time I'd seen it. One clerk told me they had only started doing it last year. So they now have an answer to an Arctic blast, just as they have an answer to a thunderstorm, and pretty much all answers at Disney lead to money. So it was great being there, and I have some fresh insight, but mostly we will be plumbing Vance's experience. I do want to caution you. We always try and avoid it when we can, but Vance is working on a cell phone. He has stepped out of the GKIC Peak Performers meeting, also in Orlando, in order to be on this call with us. And so his audio quality is not going to be what it would be on a landline, but better we have him slightly impaired than not have him at all. So, again, welcome to the call, Vance, and thanks for stepping out of the meeting and taking the time.
Definitely my pleasure.
I'd just like to start by making sure everybody is familiar with you. And so you really have two self-introductions to give. One, I need to make sure everybody understands your current businesses. And two, if you would, your experience at Disney, just kind of an overview of that.
Sure. Well, currently I own a bricks and mortar business on the eastern shore of Maryland, which is, if anybody knows, full of cornfields, cows, and chicken houses. And it's a very rural area of the state of Maryland. And to operate an Oriental rug cleaning business and a upholstery and carpet cleaning business just has its challenges there, because we're obviously targeting the affluent, and we need to dodge the single-wide trailers that kind of get in our way sometimes. My other business is I've recently started teaching other other businesses how to implement Disney-style service, whether it be into a medical office or through an in-home service company, plumber, electrician, carpet cleaner, and more importantly, how to profit from that service. My background at Disney is really kind of was all spent in the resorts. For those of you that are familiar with the Yacht and Beach Resort over near Epcot Center, I was on the opening team for that. It was my initiation into Disney. I worked aboard the Empress Lily, which was named after Walt's wife. I believe now it's some sort of crab house. I don't know if I would call it a pleasure, but I got to work at Pleasure Island back when it was a nightclub. This was Disney's experiment with booze and nighttime activities. And you could fill probably 3 volumes of a book on things Disney shouldn't have done, all at just Pleasure Island. Combining roller skates and alcohol at Disney was just a bad idea. We had the Rock and Roller Dome. You could rent roller skates, drink a beer, and go around.
I remember that thing.
Yeah, that was rough. But mostly I worked at the Contemporary Resort. It was the flagship resort, the one, for those of you who don't know, that's the one that the monorail travels through. And I was on, at the time, they were really revitalizing the resort experience. Back in the 80s, it was a very theme park-oriented company, and the resorts were just, an ancillary thing there. You had to feed them, you had to house them, but not much attention was paid to it. And in the late 80s, early 90s, a couple of the new executives, especially after the opening of Euro Disney, where the service level was just impeccable at the resorts as well as the park, they realized that there was a vast amount of money to be made doing the resort piece a heck of a lot better. So I was on the revitalization team, and one of the areas, if you've been there and you've seen Chef Mickey's restaurant, that is my little baby. Still have friends that work there. Amazing. And the people work there for, 35 years in the same place. I don't think I could have ever done that. But, reopening and opening that restaurant really was eye-opening because I got to work with some of the Imagineers, interior designers, and, all of the systems that go into creating that magical experience for Disney guests. Our task was, it was a 400-seat restaurant, and we had to figure out how to get Mickey Mouse through the restaurant in under 43 minutes, which was quite the challenge.
A couple of the things that you've mentioned, as you say, there was a time when they viewed things like housing and feeding people as a necessary evil. And it is very clear that they have evolved to a point where they embrace necessary functions and utilities of all kinds and want to do them very, very well from an experience standpoint, and also want them to be independent profit centers in and of themselves. And I'm sure you've paid attention to the evolving Magic Band thing.
Oh, yeah.
Which it gets better. I noticed that it worked better this time than it did several months ago. But, there's a functional issue there of moving people more quickly and eliminating lost keys and lost credit cards and all of that in the parks. There's also the speeding up and the casino chip psychology of making money go away and having you spend just with a little beep of something that's on your arm, which the last quarterly earnings report clearly indicates at the park level that per head spending has gone up since the Magic Band. And then, once you have to issue them anyway, then they very quickly invented jewelry for them.
Exactly.
So that wearing one would make you want to buy something. I just think they're brilliant at that stuff now. And as you pointed out, at one time they weren't very good at it at all, but boy, they have gotten good.
Yeah, they had the Disney dollars back in the 80s and 90s,
right?
Where you exchange your, your currency for Donald Duck-based money, and nobody ever turned that stuff in. They took it home as a souvenir, so they're leaving with 20s and 50s and Disney money, and Disney's got the real cash. Good.
Yeah, it was probably the highest margin of anything on the planet, but they could only get about 20% of the folks to do it. The band, of course, is forced on everybody.
Right.
So you've taken money out of the equation with 100% of your customers. The other thing you mentioned that I think casual visitors underestimate is the precision with which they do things and deal with very large numbers. You referenced getting Mickey through that restaurant and having him give sort of equal time to all 400 patrons in 43 minutes. That precision is all through everything that they do, visibly and in many cases invisibly, but they're really great at this attention to detail thing that so many business operators aren't.
Well, and that's the key separator, from, the great businesses and the ho-hum businesses. And I think one of the things, and Michael Eisner talked about this back in his day, was all about, how we make the magic. And if you think about a magician, the audience sees one thing. They see the illusion. They see the magic trick, the elephant disappear from the stage or what have you. But to the magician, it is a systematic, regimented, hand-eye movement that's just been rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed so that it is just second nature. And that's how that magic is created for the magician. And Disney is very much the same way. We had Hurricane Aaron. I mean, just their hurricane plan would boggle your mind. We were during Hurricane Aaron, which was back in the late 90s, came blowing through, and part of the hurricane contingency plan was, where do we put the people from Camp Wilderness, or Fort Wilderness, the campground? They can't very well stay in these little rickety cabins, or tents, or in their drive-along trailers. They got to go somewhere. And the Contemporary Resort was one of the shelters, if you want to call it that. And for one night, we had probably about 700 Fort Wilderness campers sleeping on the floor of our ballroom. But everything's already pre-staged. The pallets of water, the pallets of food, everything comes out, and then that in itself becomes an experience for that guest. They're a little nervous because there's a hurricane outside, but we were able to, in the morning, because the restaurant was very busy, the morning after the hurricane, we actually took the characters from our restaurant down to the ballroom. And if you can imagine, having Mickey or Goofy tapping you on the shoulder as a 6 or 7-year-old kid to wake you up out of your sleep, I mean, that family is sold on Disney, for generations.
Yeah, and that is, it's a little bit different than the way we handled Katrina in the New Orleans Dome, I guess.
Yeah.
So the first thing that I wanted to kind of backtrack in a couple of questions, and then we'll get to application of this in your business and application of this in the businesses you now advise. But I wanted to backtrack all the way to Pleasure Island and booze and roller skates and mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think most people appreciate how many things Disney screws up the first time and goes back and makes good a second time or a third time. Sort of a creative and persistent resilience. And so maybe you could just talk about, other than the roller skates and the alcohol, as you said, you could fill a book. I mean, a couple of things you witnessed that, with 20/20 hindsight, were ill-conceived and went awry and were fixed or replaced.
Well, some of the clubs there, and if we're talking specifically about Pleasure Island, some of the clubs there were tremendously successful because they had a very interactive entertainment component, the Adventurers Club.
Which I love. I love
it.
it.
Phenomenal. The Comedy Warehouse, where they had the improv comedy. It was more of a show. You had to sit through it. And you couldn't be too blotto at the Adventurers Club because you wouldn't understand what's going on. So it tended to have some of the more, people that weren't there, for the sole purpose of getting completely drunk. That's some really good things. But one of the big problems we had, actually going back even further to the Yacht Beach Resort, they have a mini water park there as part of the resort. And originally they were supposed to have live fish swimming with you while you were swimming in this pool. But it never made it to opening because the fish kept dying because they couldn't get the chlorine level right where the health department would let us open the pool and it wouldn't kill the fish. So they quickly scrapped that idea.
Swimming with dead fish. You would have to have a mafia-themed park in New Jersey for that.
Yeah, we were all tasked with it. They say, you see a dead fish, you pull it out. I don't care what your job is, you pull it out. And then some of the early tests of the Tower of Terror, they did what was called a sandbag test. And because they hadn't done that free fall drop in an enclosed space, I mean, they had that ride at, in Texas and New Jersey and a couple other places, but it was all outdoors.
Right.
They hadn't quite accounted for the air pressure, so when the ride dropped, it created such a vacuum that all of the drywall inside the chamber came crashing down on top of the car. And it was probably 2 or 3 months before the sandbags in the seats survived. So I mean, just that they were, bound and determined to get this thing right.
It reminds all the way back to we were at D23 this last time, and some of the people that worked with Walt at the World's Fair were there, and they had built an attraction there for Ford Motor Company that had the new Lincoln cars on a track going through a building like the monorail goes in and out of the Contemporary. And this track came out a pretty good way over the parking lot so people from a distance could see the cars coming out of the building, looping back around and going in the building. And the guy said they hadn't really accounted for the fact that this had an uphill and a downhill factor to it. And it had different cars on it, like full-size Lincoln Continental convertibles and then little Mercuries and stuff. And nobody had allotted for the weight differential in these cars. So in a couple places where they slowed and where they came to a stop, they all smashed into each other. And they only had a couple days to open. So they wound up bringing people in, a whole auto body crew every night to fix all the damage on all the cars that had occurred during the day. And they had guys walking around with baseball bats, sticking the baseball bats in between the cars to keep them from smashing into each other. And that's how they operated this attraction for the entire time of the World's Fair. And here all these years later, we're dealing with a tower that nobody realized it was going to pull the drywall down on top of it, and nobody realized the fish were all going to die until the last minute. And it's sort of that's part of the game, and we'll deal with it, and we'll fix it.
Yeah. one of the larger things, with the problem with Pleasure Island, aside from, the excessive amount of alcohol that people are ingesting after not eating all day and spending it at 95 degrees heat, that's just a recipe for disaster. But the process that we had to go through to handle some of these folks, I mean, this is the only Disney park where people were regularly and routinely not asked to leave, but literally thrown out and or arrested and or sent out in an ambulance. So all around it was really difficult to have a Disney experience, when you're surrounded by, 19-year-olds trying to get a beer and take out, security. We didn't call them bouncers. They were security hosts.
Well, they're redoing that whole thing again, I'm sure you know.
Yeah.
Because, they sort of replaced that whole mess with a new downtown Disney, and they've wound up not particularly happy about that either.
Right.
And are pouring a ton of money into making it more Disney-like. Again, they're sort of willing to do that over and over again. They admit they messed up the California Adventure thing and have redone and are redoing all that. Let me ask you on the flip side that from all your Disney experience and work with the Imagineers and making the restaurants work, what really impressed you the most that you think is sort of uniquely Disney that most other business operators, probably including Universal Studios, most other business operators just really don't grasp?
Well, aside from the obvious attention to detail, and it is, I think putting in and really getting absorbed in the culture is tremendous. And whether you've got a 2-person business or, a 60,000-person business, having that culture, whatever it is for your business, communicated through everyone. I mean, when I was there, there was 40,000 employees there, and for, all 40,000 of us to be singing the same song and to be getting to providing the same service, I think that's huge. And the level of communication and being able to be immersed in that culture is one. But I think really, when you look at the Disney core objectives, safety is the number one thing that all Disney Imagineers, all Disney operators, cast members, safety is the number one thing that they need to make sure it's a safe environment. And they don't want people walking around, you don't walk around thinking, oh, this is a safe place. You're made to feel that way. And I think a lot of what some businesses don't do is they don't focus on, well, is this going to kill you? Is this going to hurt you? What's the escape route? What's the, a lot of folks, especially, if you're in manufacturing or something, a lot of that thought is not gone into it.
It's interesting that exact same point was enunciated to us by the Imagineer we just had lunch with. And, they have their 4 pillars, and the first one of which is that people feel safe here. And I think you can expand that in business. It doesn't necessarily have to relate to physical safety in a physical place. It is trust. Do I feel okay coming into a selling environment with these people? I asked once, several of our people went over and took the Vacation Club sales presentation on my urging. And I asked once about show-up rate, people who book appointments that aren't immediately picked up, but are going at a later time, and there's less than a 5% no-show or cancellation.
Yep.
And I don't think that would happen anywhere else. And it happens there because people trust Disney and feel even going into a sales pitch that they know is a sales pitch, they don't really feel uncomfortable about it. They feel like they're going to be treated okay. They're not worried about being abused. And I think you're right. A lot of businesses don't give enough thought broadly to how do people feel about us.
Well,
And
I run, a business that is not held in high regard with most consumers. I mean, there's been so many 60-minute or 20/20 exposés on, carpet cleaners stealing and, robbing and pillaging and things.
using water instead of shampoo, and
exactly.
I've seen all of it.
Yeah.
The industry is very well known for bait and switch.
Yep.
Right? We'll clean a room free, and you wind up with a $300 bill.
Exactly.
So you're right. You like timeshare. The business that you're in now, your core business, is, as you say, not held in high esteem. Right up there with used car dealers.
Right.
And so talk a little bit about how you've countered that.
Well, I have the obvious advantage of business experience, which I play up significantly in my marketing. But absent even that, the way all of my employees, to me, it's just brain dead simple stuff that you should be doing. Disney costumes. My people, my employees are in uniforms. You are dressed and pressed. My guys all carry extra uniforms, so if you get messy on the first job, you're looking pressed and clean on the second job. We approach our clients. We actually have a gift. So we have a pre-cleaning gift that we give. The whole thing is scripted from the minute they park the van in the street and walk up to the house. We ask to be let in. We don't barge in because we're entering someone's home. So it's all scripted out on all these things to help put the client at ease, and also to know that we are, professionals in our business, and we're not going to ruin your, $3,000 sofa, or, we're going to take care of you, and we're not going to bait and switch you. And we educate them and we guide them. And we let them make the decision that's right for them. 9 times out of 10, it's the one we want them to make, which is a higher priced item. But really, just taking that time to to script out your service process, is huge. In that first 2 minutes, I get cards all the time about oh my God, he was lovely. He sent me this. He did that. He took the time. And it's so much, as you say all the time, it is so much easier to serve people who are willing to pay, because we can offer the service that can support that, or that's supported by the price. And, and Disney does it all the time. Heck, Disney just raised their prices, last week?
Yeah,
I was laughing. Tickets just went up again?
Yeah, Carla and I was laughing, pointing it out to Carla. So Disney's reaction to the bad PR about measles,
yep,
in their California park is to raise the ticket price. That's their reaction.
Yep.
It was Eisner, your era CEO, famously said, "We can trust our customers." But I don't want people to miss. See what you just said. The scripting and choreography that is consistent is a hallmark of Disney and a missing element in so many businesses. If a business has, I don't know how many techs you have out there on trucks, but if a business has 5 and you experienced all 5 of them, in most businesses you would have 5 different experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And in Disney you would have the same experience every single damn time. And you use the words, scripted from parking the truck to every step to the door and in. See, that's exactly what does not happen. And I just had, for a very new client, I just had supposedly their 5 top salespeople on the phone recorded and transcribed their whole sales presentations, which is roughly a 40-minute sales presentation. there is so much variance from one to the other. I could give them to you and tell you they were 5 competitors rather than all from the same company, and you would believe me.
Right.
And you know, that's just insane, but it is an insane norm. And you have, like, every step standardized to a best practice, right?
Exactly. And, you know, we take, you know, and as you said, I think you said it at Info Summit, you know, making every mundane thing you do into an experience. And, you know, we have to knock on the door and we have to be let in. Well, why can't we make that an experience? Here's a gift. Before we even step into the door, you know, my guys are giving the client, you know, a little gift before we come in. Also helps with reciprocity later on when I'm trying to, you know, do an upsell. But, you know, I mean, think about Disney. I mean, you know, of course we had a 400-seat restaurant, so we would serve at breakfast upwards to 2,000 people, you know, in a 3.5, 4-hour span. You know, I mean, and most of the attractions and most of the restaurants, they have what's called line-ertainment. And that's entertainment for the people that are waiting in line. Make that, they got to wait in line. Well, let's make it an experience for them. And whether it's a character or somebody juggling or, you know, guys tying up balloon animals, it just made the whole experience that much better.
The other thing, little things, so you mentioned your guys always carry a spare uniform to switch into if they get one dirty. That's a very Disney-esque thing that, again, many businesses give no thought to. Their frontline people, when several people I know who do on-site inspections, I mean, there's women at the front desk in spas with broken fingernails.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's a waitress at a restaurant halfway through her shift who has spilled stuff all over her and is coming to your table with spilled stuff all over her. I mean, we see it all the time. Why do you think businesses don't grasp that this is important and manageable?
Well, I mean, I think, you know, a few years ago before, you know, especially the middle class started watching every penny and what they spent, they just assumed people were coming back, you know, regardless of, you know, whether it was for the $9 special that became the $7 special that became the $5 special.
Yeah.
And it's really, again, it comes down to that culture and the leader at the top and what they allow to happen in their business. I mean, there's only a couple of restaurants my wife and I can go to that she will actually sit through a meal with me because I get apoplectic when, you know, the fork has been sitting on the carpet in front of our table, and not only do all the waiters and busboys step over it, but the managers step over it. You know, it's a black carpet with a silver knife on it. It's not like it's hiding. And
yeah,
you know,
that would drive you nuts as a Disney person.
Oh man, you know, well, and for years after I left Disney, I mean, I'd be walking through the mall, I'd be picking up paper off the floor.
Yeah.
You know, it's just ingrained in you. That's what you do. You know, well, it's like, I'm not holding your hand now. You pick that tissue up. All right.
Our Imagineers said that whatever our job position is, we are also all custodians.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody learns what did she call it? The Disney scoop.
Yep.
Of how to bend over and pick up that piece of offending.
And not break a stride. Just keep walking.
Yeah. So we're going to go to open up the lines and go to Q&A fairly soon and let people play. Before we do, and then I have one other question for you while people are getting in queue, but before we do you have a website or websites? Do you have things for people to see?
Sure.
Information about the services you're providing to business owners?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my service website is deliverservicenow.com, and on that homepage there is a free report called Systematic Magic. And it is pretty much a synopsis of, all of the points, and a lot of the points we just talked about. But if you were going to implement Disney-style service in your business, that is a great place for people to start and see what kind of things I look at when I go into a business. I've done some mystery shopping, and good gracious. I actually turned one down. I said, there's no help for you. Just close the doors. That was hard. I mean, the owner, was two owners, and the one owner was just forget it. So like that. Moving on.
So that site again is deliver service
now.
Okay.
Yep.
And can they get a look at your original business, your carpet cleaning business?
Oh, sure. Yeah, definitely. I have. I got a couple of websites for that. My carpet cleaning website is easternshorecarpetcleaning.com, kind of a mouthful. And then for my high-end Oriental rug cleaning business, I have Oriental Rug Spa of the easternshore.com.
So my last question is really an advertising/marketing question rather than an experience service question, and it goes to the flyer that appeared in our newsletter that you did. Talk a little bit about your newspaper inserts in general and about what you did there.
Sure. For a number of months, it's probably about 6 or 7 months, our local newspaper, on Sundays, when you get all of the flyers and coupons section, they would wrap it in blank newsprint. So it was a sheet of newspaper with no ink on it that, they would do it ahead of time, so that all they would do, they would package this thing up on Tuesday or Wednesday, and then when Sunday came around, they could just shove the whole package in. And I'm like, this is just a big waste of paper. I can't believe they're not doing anything with this. So I asked my sales rep, hey, could I print something on that? And, I don't know, let me find out. He came back to me and says, how much do you want to pay? And well, my first answer was nothing. But that didn't go over well. So we agreed on a ridiculously low price. And I actually can get, 60,000 of these things for $900, full color on 2 sides, and a 1-page, full-page color ad for this paper is like $1,700 or $1,800. So for $900, distribution's only $14,000, so that $60,000 runs through, 4 Sundays, and I paid once. Of course, I have bought up the next year's worth of, that advertising because I'm not letting that one go.
The principle of that is to be alert. The whole infomercial industry restarted after Reagan deregulated the airwaves, and it really restarted with people going to TV stations and saying, hey, you don't do anything with all that time after midnight. Most broadcast television went off the air at midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, and they showed a picture of the American flag, and they said, we're done for the day, and we'll see you tomorrow morning at 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. And people bought that time for $100, $200, $300 for the whole night, and just ran their infomercial, 20 times. And those media opportunities occur in different places at different times, and nobody really thinks about them. Fran Tarkenton, who played quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings way back when, and then hosted some infomercials for us at Guthrie Renker. He hosted the first Tony Robbins show. He hosted Think and Grow Rich, etc. Fran's first big entrepreneurial venture, when he left football, he invented, if you can call it an invention, the sale of ad space on airline ticket folders.
Oh.
If you flew American Airlines before Fran, you got your tickets in a little paper folder with American Airlines on it. If you flew United, you got United, etc. And Fran had his conversation was just like yours. He went to the airlines and said, can I pay to put advertising I want on the inside of those folders that are now blank? And the initial deal was pay the cost of the folder. And then, as Fran tells the story, he locked himself in his office for a week and made phone calls. The one advantage he had was every CEO would take a call at the time from Fran Tarkenton. And he sold the space for a giant multiple of what he was paying for it. And he held on to that space for a number of years and made an enormous amount of money.
Well, you know who does that really well? Actually, it's the hotel you host up in Cincinnati. The hotel keys have ads for Domino's Pizza on the hotel key. The whole hotel key is a Domino's Pizza ad.
There you go.
And I've been carrying that damn card around with me. So I show it to everybody. I said, this is just ingenious. And I'm sitting at a Renaissance right now, and I can't even read the word Renaissance on my card.
Yep. So the principle there is for people to be alert. Operator, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Terrific. We are going to let people get in and play for about 20 minutes, maybe even 25. And maybe you can tell everybody how to get in the queue and participate. And then I have just a couple of quick crash commercial messages, and then we'll start with questions.
Okay, so if you'd like to ask a question or get into the queue, all you need to do is press the number 1 on your phone. Once again, press the number 1 only once on your phone. That'll get you into the question queue, and we'll take questions in the order that they're received.
All right, very quickly, a couple sharp elbow nagging reminders. I'm not sure of the expired dates and discounts, but we are rapidly approaching Super Conference, obviously. I would imagine most people on this call have registered, but if you have been negligent, it really is going to be a super conference. If you haven't taken a close look at everything that's going on and everybody that's speaking and all the activities, you can still do that at the gkic.com site. I imagine it's gkic.com/super conference, and it'll be a shame for you to miss this one because it's going to be a goodie. And if you've heard Dave's interview with Penn of Penn & Teller, who's with us as our celebrity entrepreneur, it's a spectacular interview, and Penn's going to be a fascinating person to hear from. And, of course, Diamond members also get that photo opportunity and quick meet and greet with Penn. Next, sharp elbow reminder, I have my Dan Only June events, and registration for those is open but is filling. If you have not received information, it's because you didn't ask for it. And the only way people get it is if they ask for it. So you need to fax Vicki at my office, 602-269-3113, and a sales brochure about Advanced Business Development and Advanced Direct Marketing Academy, which is a 2-day event, and Modus Operandi Day, which is a 1-day event, will be sent to you. The only guest speaker at Advanced Business Development, by the way, is my friend Anito Cabane, who at High Point University, I always say, if the Disney people were turned loose on a college and told to Disneyfy it, High Point is what would result. And Nito has done just a almost unimaginable job of developing that college's business and its student experience and its sales process. And so he will be with us for an evening. Otherwise, it's you and me, and it's a fairly small group. As I said, about 150 primaries, no more than 187 folks in the room, just a few key exhibitors, and in-depth and advanced work. So if you haven't availed yourself of the information, time's pretty short, even though June may feel far off to you. But registration will close early. We always fill early. And the very last discounts expire very early April. I forget the exact date, but the clock is ticking. And that information will only come to you if you ask for it by faxing 602-269-3113. And now we have some time for whatever you'd like to talk about with Vance and or me. And so, operator, you can let the first one through the gate.
Okay, our first caller is going to be Eric in Texas. Eric, your line is open.
Hello, Vance.
Hello.
Hi. So I've got a question that centers on systems. So how do you develop those systems that you put into place when you're a small organization and you don't have any procedures but realize that you need them, and you're looking at this and thinking, okay, where do I even begin? So I was wondering if you could talk about where you begin and what you focus on, and then what you move on to, and in conjunction with that, how do you adopt the Disney mentality of their approach to solving problems with doing whatever it takes, which is fantastic, with the reality of I don't have Disney's resources. So I was wondering if you could comment on that.
Sure. Well, I think your second question first. Obviously Disney has been around for, umpteen decades, a bunch of decades now, so a lot of it has been data collected over time. And, what I advise smaller businesses to do when I work with them is, just have a blotter or a legal pad, and every time you see something going on, write it down, especially if you see something happening that you don't like, make sure that's written down, and then that becomes another page, in your standard operating procedure or your manual or what have you. And so that occurs just naturally over time. To start, and this is one of the things, and, they talk about storyboards all the time or your perfect client experience. I actually write out my perfect client experience in story form from my client's point of view. So, like when we did Chef Mickey's, we wrote out, this was probably a 15-page, it was typewriters then, we didn't have computers yet, single-space type document about a family's experience in our restaurant. And all of the things that they would go through, from setting up the reservation to arriving at the restaurant, getting in line, checking in, the wait, who's going to serve them what, how what drink is served, how the characters interact throughout the dining room. And we started with that story. And the key thing with that story was, I would say 90% of it was actually written by our hourly employees. So it was the servers that wrote the server part of the story. It was our greeting hostesses or hosts who wrote how a client or how the guest should be greeted. And you get this, one, you can't do it yourself. It's just, you're going to miss a lot, and you won't get the buy-in from your team. Having them involved in it, and especially if you just start with the story, that's huge, because now they're not thinking standards, they're not thinking rules and regulations, they're thinking, okay, this is the perfect story, this is the perfect way, for every one of our clients to experience our business. And once you have your story, then you break out your standards or your operating standards on how you're going to support that story. How are you going to make that story a reality? So I know that, in my carpet cleaning business, that we've got part of the story is the guest is going to be greeted by a smiling, cheerful, well-dressed, non-smelly carpet cleaning professional. We don't call them technicians. I don't even call my guys technicians. I call them carpet cleaning professionals. And then we go and we back up that greeting with, okay, you get to the front door, you do this step, and okay, you knock on the door, you don't ring the bell, and, what is your greeting? How are you going to say something to the client? And we always ask, may we come in? All that from the story, and then we script it on the back end. Does that make sense for you?
Absolutely.
And Eric, I would just say, so first of all, it's great questions. And the one thing that I always tell people to keep in mind, we are often too quick to excuse ourselves because some variation of but we don't have the resources that Disney does. And the two things about that I say to people are, number one, Disney didn't either when they started. But two, an awful lot of this, it really doesn't cost any more to do it well than it does to do it badly. It's the time to think it through and to script it or to choreograph it. And then it really isn't, it doesn't cost any more to be nice than to be not nice. It doesn't cost any more to have that uniform clean and press than to be a little sloppy. A lot of this is not, you don't need $1 million in a team of 26 people to do it in a small business. But you do have to prioritize it. My favorite Disney No Resources story goes back to the very beginning of Disneyland. And they were famously running out of money as they got to the opening. And by the way, the initial opening had a lot of problems. And, they just fixed it and did another grand opening. But they had planted, as you approach the entrance, a whole bed of flowers and great plants. But they had only got one side done, and then they ran out of dough. And so the other side was basically barren dirt a couple of days before the opening. And they finally got to Walt with the bad news. Now, 99% of the companies would have left bare dirt because we don't have the resources. We don't have the resources. Walt made up fake Latin names for fake plants that were put on fake signs, and they stuck the signs all over the dirt. So people saw what was to come and imagined what was to come. And the signs didn't cost much money. So there are answers when resources are limited that still allow you to craft and deliver a great customer experience. And we should never excuse ourselves just because we don't have a big wallet or we don't have a big team.
If you get a chance to read the Kenneth Cole story, Dan did a great take on that a few years ago. The difference between resources and being resourceful. And if you haven't read the Kenneth Cole story, it's got a coffee table book, or you can Google it. But when you're first starting out, you're right. I mean, just because you don't have the budget of Disney at the moment, doesn't excuse you from being able to do it. And if you have, the desire and the tenacity to create a high service organization that is only going to increase your profits down the line, then that's the key driving factor.
Yeah, and that is a great book. Eric, thanks. And operator, let the next one in.
Okay, our next question is going to come from Sanford in California. Sanford, your line's open.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can barely.
Oh, there you are.
There you go.
Okay, sorry. First of all, thanks. So far, what I've heard is fantastic. Thanks to both of you. I joined just a hair late, so I may have missed this. I heard mention of the 4 pillars in Disney service, and then you guys went into the safety and talked about that a lot. Did I miss the first three? And if I did, sorry. If I didn't, I'd love to hear the first three and any comments each of you have about that.
Vance, you probably know them by heart. I had to take notes.
Well, safety being first and foremost. Courtesy is one of the pillars. Show, the big show that gets put on, is the other. And then, some nicer term for profitability.
Yeah, they called it this time business results.
There we go.
There you go. You're right. So it's safety, courtesy, the show, and Disney views everything. So everything at Disney is a story, and everything is a show. And then their term, at least this time around, was business results, which is a polite way of saying selling a lot of stuff at really high prices.
Okay, appreciate that. And I guess it's almost common sense with respect to what courtesy is. You guys did such a good job on sort of delving into what safety means in general business as opposed to at the park itself. Any comments on any of the three, the courtesy, the big show, or profitability, any things that just really stand out?
Well, I think with show, certainly, and we talked a little bit about this, you've got certain things in your business that you have to do, whether it be answer the phone, answer an email, or anything, or agree to guess how you talk to somebody, or if there's a process they have to go through. And to make that interaction an experience, that's all about the show. I talked about the greeting. Part of our show is also our follow-up thank you package, that we send. I guess you don't have to thank your clients. It'd be a smart thing to do. But the package that we send out is not even a letter or a postcard. It's a full package of goodies to our clients, and then segmented based on how much they spent is how big the package is. But there's a show, in that aspect. The demonstrations we do in home from my technicians, have a little bit of a theatrical flair to them, whether we're demonstrating how well our carpet protectant works or, how well we can get, our inspection process is a show, getting the guys down, crawling on hands and knees, looking for spots and sniffing out smells. That's all part of the show. The courtesy thing, a lot of times I can teach all the other stuff. A lot of times that courtesy piece, is something that they have to bring with them. I can't teach people to be nice. That's one of the key qualities that somebody who's working for me, they've got to have that, because I can teach anything else.
But when you say it's common sense, we wish it was. It's actually uncommon sense, because enormous percentages of people, to Vance's point, just don't think about courtesy. And so, like, when we send actual real birthday cards, we were talking about this with the group I was with at Disney. Dustin Burleson was there, who does it for his orthodontic practice, and someone else was there just for their business. And they said they invariably get phone calls, thanking him because this is the only birthday card I got. People don't send thank you notes. People don't go out of their way to help somebody who clearly, needs help. I saw the last time, not this time, the last time I was at Disney, and I described it to my group. There's this very small Japanese fellow with his family, and he has got a big map out of the park, and he's clearly lost and confused. And he goes over to the street sweeper guy, the maintenance guy, who is one of the largest guys I've ever seen in my life. Huge, bald-headed black guy, kind of looks like that actor Ving Rhames, I think is his name. But he could be the entire offensive line of the Cleveland Browns, but as tall as LeBron. And there was clearly a language barrier, so there was that difficulty. So a couple minutes into this conversation, I watched as the maintenance guy leads the lost Japanese fellow over to a bench, so the maintenance guy can sit down on the bench and be now the same height as the Japanese guest and spread the map out on his lap and can point to things. And he spent 10 minutes because of the language barrier helping. See, as Vance says, it's kind of like hard to teach that. You can hire for it, and you can create a culture that encourages it. But it really is important. The show thing, Vance's point, every business has show elements to it. A lot of brick and mortar businesses, and we scripted, choreographed, and taught this back in the 80s to chiropractors and dentists. They don't do a new patient tour of the entire office and do it well. Here's what's in this room, and here's what it does, and here's where the bathrooms are, and here's where this is. And Grant Miller, a longtime member of ours who has sun tanning salons in Erie, Pennsylvania, has a marvelous choreographed and scripted tour of the different rooms and the different equipment. There's so many show elements available in every business that aren't taken advantage of or that are bungled, and you really have to think them through. Thanks for the question, and we're going to take one more, operator.
Thank you.
Okay, our last question is going to come from Charlie in Virginia. Charlie, your line's open.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
We got you, Doc.
Great. So, Vance, you're talking about something near and dear to me when you're talking about creating experiences. What do you think is the importance of the owner or leader of the group related to setting the tone for the culture? It's interesting because I see what new employees get trained in. The new employee gets trained in how to do the work, and often not how we work with the people that we serve. What's your viewpoint about this?
Well, I mean, I think certainly it all starts with the hiring process, and I don't want to get into that on this call. But your orientation period, it can't be, 30 minutes and here's the list of 19 things, you're going to get fired for, and here's the 6 things you should never say. The orientation, and I don't care if you got a business of 2 people or more, your orientation it sets the tone for what's going to happen. I have, my lead technician, does the actual physical training on the, the technical aspects of the job. But I'm the one that does the orientation for new employees. We spend probably the whole morning on the levels of service that we provide and why it's important that you do look good. Disney does their the traditions, which is 2 days of Disney background, and what it means to be an employee or a cast member at Disney. And I do the same thing because not everybody, people have been with me for years, they know my story. So I need to bring people up to speed rather quickly, and I give them the history of my small but mighty company, of my struggles in the past, and how I got to where I am, so that they now feel part of the story and they can relate it, because invariably we get asked about what's up with that boss from Disney that you've got there.
Mm-hmm.
Charlie, you, within your question, you hit the nail of the mistake made. Almost all new employee or associate training is how to do the job. And Disney starts with who we are, how we got here, what we're about, and why to do the job in the way we're going to tell you to do the job.
Right.
Before anybody gets to how to do the job.
Yep.
And that traditions course that Vance mentioned And keep in mind, Disney World in Orlando now is the largest on-site employer in America. They employ more people than the Pentagon.
Wow.
I forget the number. Vance, you may know the number, but
seasonally, you're right around 60,000.
yeah, I think it's actually 80 now. Come to think of it.
Possibly.
I mean, it's just huge, and every single person goes through that traditions course before they do anything else, and then most of the jobs are both scripted and choreographed. I mean, there is a proper Disney hand gesture for everybody at a podium in a restaurant, guiding people now into the restaurant. So there's this performance art that is part of the job that people accept as part of the job because they were taught the traditions of the job. And the tendency is just, as Vance just said, man, hire them, give them the phone script, which now everybody has their own opinions about, quickly orient them to do the job and throw them into it. And you wind up, of course, with chaos when you do that.
And what Dan said about that, the why, that is when you're creating your story or your storyboard or your perfect client experience, the why is the biggest piece of the puzzle, because that's what gets your employees engaged. Because a lot of people, they'll just say, oh, because I told you to do it. But if they know why it's important to greet a client or a customer in a certain way, that really gets their brain functioning and more towards, the goal that you've cast.
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir. And thank you, Vance. The clock has bit me. Vance, again, one more time, your Disnify your service site.
Sure, is deliverservicenow.com, and there's a free report called Systematic Magic that you can get as a PDF.
Terrific. Thanks again. Thanks everybody that was on the call, and if not before, see you next month.